So I just watched the 2025 film Companion, to be confused with the Companion from 1994, or the Companion from 2015, or Companion from 2021, or the Companion from 2012, or the dozens if not hundreds of other movies with Companion in the title. But I digress. Wait, before I digress, I feel like it is such a pet peeve of mine when movies have a very generic title. I think it just makes it so much harder to find the film. I don't know, I feel like movie titles should be like rap names. If you can't tell your name apart from another rapper, you're doing yourself injustice as far as marketing goes. Anyway, I digress. The sequel. Companion is a thriller with sci-fi elements written by Drew Hancock. It's about a couple, Josh and Iris, who decide to spend time away in a remote cabin with Josh's friends. And you might be thinking, well, that's the plot to so many movies. And to that I say, fair point. Yeah, fair point. I'm going to do this review in two parts. The first part will have no spoilers. I'm just going to give honest thoughts and opinions. And then the second half will be riddled with spoilers. Well, light spoilers. I won't like ruin like major plot points, but it's hard to give my thoughts and opinions about a lot of film without spoiling a bit of it. With that said, I'll jump right into it. So for the first half, I will be rating Companion based on 5 different, very simple criteria: mise-en-scene, performance, cinematography, editing, and sound. And I'll give it a rating based on those things. Mise-en-scene, as far as that goes, I think the movie does absolutely okay. You know what I mean? Like, there isn't anything spectacular or grand about it as far as like scenery goes. I mean, it's very beautiful. It's stunning. They're in the woods, out in this like beautiful sort of majestic background that is complemented by this beautiful mansion style cabin that they're in. Companion doesn't break away or try to reinvent the wheel. It is very cookie cutter. And I don't mean that in a negative or a bad way. They don't do anything interesting, but you don't always have to do anything interesting for something to be good. As far as scenes go, it's very straightforward as far as like thrillers go, or even horror film style movies. Slow build up, something happens, they all gather together in one room like Scooby-Doo characters, figure out what to do next, and then the story progresses, which again is absolutely fine. I don't think they set out to make a cult classic here. So as far as mise-en-scene, I have to give the Companion a 2 out of 5, maybe 2.5. It's not terrible, but it's nothing special. As far as performance goes, I honestly, this is one of the rare films I will say that the acting is better than the writing. And don't get me wrong, I think there are scenes where the acting isn't up to snuff as far as the film goes, but honestly I think that's fine. Like, it's not like this cast is like star-studded veterans who have like 20 years under their belt. Honestly, the most famous person I could name in the movie was Jaboukie Young-White, and he was only in it for like 10 minutes and 3 lines of dialogue. Like, I know these actors have been in other things, but they're not A-listers, I want to say. I mean, I hope they are someday. They did a great job, but c'est la vie. The writing at times can feel a bit like, and I know I keep using this word, but cookie cutter, like they're not trying to do anything special. It often feels very like, how do I explain it? Not exciting, I guess. Like, and that could be as a result of the nature of filmmaking and sort of distribution that we're in, because everything is not necessarily made for artistic endeavor. It's made to sell. And that can very often be a hard line to walk. So very often people just settle to go with something that will likely sell. And a sci-fi thriller, as long as it's, pretty cookie cutter, will do reasonably well. There's just genres of movies that no matter what you do will do reasonable as long as you don't try to break out of the mold. Just to very quickly go through the cast, because it's very small, which I kind of like. I love a small cast, maybe because I love theater and seeing stage plays, but it feels a lot more intimate even in a movie. So if you can make a movie work with a very small cast, I'm always appreciative, especially nowadays where like every movie feels like it has like a cast of like 20 names or people you have to remember, and at least like 6 famous people cameos. I'm tired of those, but whatever. Sophie Thatcher, who plays Iris, solid job. She conveyed what she was trying to convey as far as her role goes, which was a quirked up white girl, which I'm all aboard. Jack Quaid also did a great job. He did his role. I think he could have did a bit better, but that could have also just been the writing. In certain parts, it felt very lacking. Like, honestly, I think Jack Quaid maybe a more seasoned actor, but Sophie Thatcher, in a lot of scenes, it felt like he was trying to catch up to her, if that makes sense. Lukas Gage, who plays Patrick, very, very few lines. He played his role well. He was kind of in the background, even though he played a very pivotal role, especially later on in the movie. Suri, who plays Kat, honestly, I have issues with her character. I am always reluctant, or at least it makes me raise an eyebrow whenever a black or brown woman plays a bitchy, mean character for some reason, especially when their character isn't fleshed out. And 9 times out of 10, when it comes to thriller films, there isn't going to be a whole lot of character development or backstory for side characters. So it's okay. But her character was entirely just being this sort of like mean, bitchy person, even though technically she was just as important, I want to say, to a degree, as Jack Quaid's character. Like, she's just kind of just portrayed as like this bitch character who is kind of mean girly, which honestly can feel very lazy for me as far as writing women goes, honestly. Then there's Harvey Guillén, who, I'm sorry, I'm sure I mispronounced that, who plays Eli. Similar criticism, you know, he was kind of just like a gay character, you know what I mean? Like, he was just sort of like a background character who was queer. Fine, like nothing very exciting or dynamic about that. And to that I say, I think it's tough to have a diverse and inclusive cast without typecasting people. Because if you're just going to have these diverse and dynamic characters with different backgrounds and who come from different walks of life, just be the cookie cutter token or sort of nothing interesting about them beyond like, oh, okay, like this could have gone to anybody, like there's nothing about this that is interesting, this could have gone to like a white person kind of thing. And that's not to say that there shouldn't be diverse or different kinds of characters. It is absolutely okay for like people of color to just be background characters in things. I'm not saying that we all have to be the stars of roles. We have and will continue to make our own space and movies with those kinds of roles. It's absolutely fine. But I don't like when like minority groups are just kind of like, oh, here's the gay friend or here's the black friend, you know, or like I said with Suri, where she's just kind of like this mean girl bitchy character. It's like, okay, I guess, you know, like I think the whole like mean girl bitchy woman is just kind of played out. Like I know they exist in real life, but like it added nothing to the story to make her this sort of mean character. Like it didn't help development, it didn't drive character, plot, nothing. It was just kind of like, you know. And lastly, as far as like more major roles, if you want to call it that, is Rupert Friend, who plays like a Russian billionaire who like owns the cabin. He did fine. All he had to do was play a Russian dude. I mean, not to say that like I can't pretend to be a Russian dude. I can't even do the accent. I'm saying like it's not a pivotal enough role or anything. Like at a certain point he is a catalyst for things, but like I can be a catalyst for things. Just kidding. I'm a terrible actor. But still, like I think he did okay. But again, ultimately I think like there's certain scenes where like the writing is pretty decent and the actors aren't necessarily up to snuff because maybe they don't have like the acting chops quite yet to really do everything or like really sell the scene. But then there's times where like the writing falls flat and it's not good enough for them as actors because they're not terrible actors. I just think this is just one of the movies in their early catalogs, I want to say, you know what I mean? So as far as performance goes, I want to say this is a 3.5. Cinematography, well, it's okay, you know, like they're not doing anything special. I'm also not super knowledgeable about cinematography. It's kind of one of those things where when I see good cinematography, I know. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a background thing for me. Like my focus typically is more writing. So like for as far as the movie goes, it is a 2. You know, like they're not doing anything special. There's very beautiful scenes and other things like that like kind of draw you in. But like again, like they're not doing anything special. Like it's a thriller, sort of like has horror elements, but like most of the movie happens during the day, so there's a lot of like very pretty scenes of like nature and stuff like that, but nothing insane. So again, it's a 2. As far as editing, and I'll even do sound together with this one, editing and sound, they're both a 2 for me, like maybe 2.5 as far as like, okay, so the editing 2, sound 2.5, maybe 3, because there's some good genuine like sound editing as far as the movie goes. Like it felt creepy when it felt creepy, the music did what it was supposed to when the music played. But again, nothing exciting or very, I don't know. I think short films have also like ruined my brain a little bit, because I'll see like the phenomenal things like short films are doing and it'll blow my mind away as far as like sound design and editing. So take what I say a bit with a grain of salt, you know what I mean? Like, it's fine, it's good, it's not terrible as far as like editing and sound goes, but again, it's not going to win any awards. But again, that is not to say it's bad, it's just not doing anything crazy, which is likely just the state of where we are as far as like movie and production goes. Overall, I think the movie is like a 3, you know what I mean? Like, it's a fun, chill movie to hang out with. There's exciting parts to keep your attention, but overall, I don't think it's like, oh my goodness, like this is like the movie of the year, like this is the movie everyone's going to be talking about or has to see. I think it's an okay film that did okay as far as like profit goes, so they might make a sequel kind of thing. It's one of those movies where you don't know what to watch, so you just kind of put it on while you're hanging out with family or friends and go, okay, all right, like this is a solid movie, but I don't think it's anyone's favorite movie, you know what I mean? Do I recommend it? Absolutely, you know what I mean? It's a fun, chill movie. There's a couple really good scenes in it that do the movie justice. Would I recommend it to people? I would. Like, if they were looking for sort of a chill film to just hang out to at the end of the night, maybe drink a beer to, yeah, I think it's an okay sort of film to hang out to. Is this hitting my top 5 faves? No, but I don't think it's trying to be anyone's top 5 faves, and I don't think every movie needs to be in someone's top 5, you know? I think it would be silly as creatives, no matter the field you're in or what media you're producing, if you always try to be someone's favorite thing. I think it's okay to just make a good movie, you know, like a solid 3 out of 5 movie, or just a 3 out of 5 painting, or a 3 out of 5 song, you know? I feel like it leads to burnout if you try to make everything you do your magnum opus. With that being said, I think that concludes my thoughts, or at least my spoiler-free thoughts. This is your warning. Past this point, the rest of this video will contain spoilers. Not necessarily huge ones, but I'm not going to filter my thoughts any longer. And this part will be a lot less structured. It's going to be a lot more freeform and just letting my thoughts flow out as they come. I had someone also write me a list of questions they thought might be interesting to hear my thoughts about, so I'm also going to talk about those as well. So as far as just general goes, I've touched on it earlier, but I think the movie is solid. It's okay. You know, it wasn't my like favorite movie of the year so far, but for what it is, I think it's fine. I'm not quite sure what the film is trying to convey, or the message, or the deeper meaning behind it. Not that it has to have one. I can't really tell if it's talking about like the ethics of AI, or if it's trying to do a whole do androids dream of electric sheep kind of thing. Like, are these mechanical robots that you can program and etc deserve rights and to be more than just like kind of sex slaves? Well, not kind of, they kind of outwardly just kind of say they're essentially just kind of physical companions, whereas like the emotional aspects of these relationships are sort of secondary to the needs of the humans, at least the physical needs. And is that ultimately ethical? Should they be treated with kindness and respect? Like, a large part of the beginning of the movie is Kat treating Iris terrible, and at first you're meant to believe that it's like maybe Kat has like a will they won't they thing with Josh. Like, is there a physical and romantic attraction? And like at one point I thought they were like cheating on one another or something like that, because Kat says, oh, you make me feel replaceable, which is suggested to be like as far as Josh goes, but ultimately I think she's saying, oh, because you're essentially just like a companion sex bot kind of thing, you know, you make me as a human woman feel replaceable. Which I think also, I'm not the biggest fan of Kat's character, at least the way she's written, simply because she's kind of just presented as like this mean girl sort of sugar baby kind of thing, who is just simply out for greed. And like, you could have written her a lot deeper than that. Hell, this entire story, or at least like a sort of subplot of the story, could have been or touched upon on sort of the efficacy of sex work, because these robots are essentially sex slaves, but Kat is also essentially a sex worker. Hell, honestly, I think a story about the sort of moral conundrum and just the efficacy of sex work in general, but also sex work in this world of where companions of sexual nature exist and can be essentially just rented out. Like, there's been a lot of like talk of AI music artists and stuff like that. Like, I think I saw somewhere that like Timbaland signed the first AI artist or whatever. I feel like it could be a cool and interesting story if people saw sex work as just as legitimate for the most part as like being a musician. Like, that is actual physical work, so that we could have real and interesting stories about the efficacy and the intricacies of that being a thing and how it would affect regular human beings who are trying to do the work. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be about like full service sex workers. It could be about like, I don't know, it can be about strippers or something like that, since in society that's deemed a more, I guess, more appropriate form of sex work. I can't really say if I have any favorite scenes of the movie. If I have a favorite scene, I think probably my favorite scene of the movie was the more violent parts of the movie, I want to say, because those kept my interest, honestly. Like when the cop was, you know, hurt for no particular reason other than that, Sergey getting stabbed. And to keep on that same sort of thought, my least favorite scene is honestly when Josh dies. I feel like it's too built up to be like, it built up too much to be so anticlimactic, in the sense that like he's just essentially stabbed in the temple with an electric wine opener kind of thing. And the entire time I was thinking, I was like, there's absolutely no fucking way that is strong enough to pierce and damage his skull. I don't give a fuck how electric or sci-fi this entire world is. Just like logically speaking, a company that makes wine openers wouldn't make something strong enough to be used as a weapon for liability purposes. Like, if we just want to add a level of logic to the story. Also, it felt so anticlimactic because like stories like that, you know, the bad guy isn't going to win. Like, Josh was never going to win, even though they kept doing the false positives or whatever. I forget what the actual term is in like media, but like you think he's going to win several times throughout the movie. And I think that worked against the movie, because it was like by the end of it, it was like, okay, you know, she is like laying there, he's like slowly caressing her body with the gun, which I think has an ultimate implication about Josh as a character, which I can touch on in a second. But ultimately, you knew he wasn't going to win, so it just felt like, all right, let's just get this over with, please. Like, it was too much icing almost, even though that like I don't think the icing was good. But imagine like an okay or even like kind of meh icing on a cake, and it's just like, this is just excess in a way that I'm not enjoying. But as far as Josh goes, I think like a through line in the story is, especially near the end, you find out that like Josh is this childish man baby who feels that he is owed much more than he is given in the world. He is portrayed as this sort of like nice guy, but is ultimately has this victim complex that he deserves more. He's the ultimate sort of like depiction of the kind of guy who would use therapy speak to abuse a woman. Like the kind of guy who would go to like a feminist rally to pick up women, or call himself an ally just to be as emotionally abusive, manipulative, and misogynistic as any other regular misogynist or sexist dude. I think what they tried to convey him as the sort of like ultimate white straight dude mediocrity, where like society all his life has told him he deserves or wants or should have more than he has, but hasn't gotten it for some other reason. And because he views himself as a nice guy, instead of looking inward, he goes, okay, it's somebody else's fault other than mine. Even though if we are to look objectively, he says, I think, and I can't remember it devoutly, but he says, I live in like a 1-bedroom apartment, I rent you. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he was some sort of maybe middle management or low tier tech bro who worked in like Silicon Valley, made probably like 6 figures, blah blah blah, but because he isn't Jeff Bezos, he feels slighted by the world, even though on average he is probably infinitely better off than like a regular American. But because he has been sold on this sort of idea of prosperity gospel in America, he isn't satisfied with what he has, because he wants infinitely more. Josh, if done well, could have been a commentary on the entitlement straight white dudes feel in America. But because it's a big budget Hollywood film, it has to work within the sort of framework that is acceptable. And it has to have some sort of mass appeal. It's essentially a popcorn film. It's very shallow and sort of surface level. What you see is what you get. And the commentary is going to be very vague because people aren't paying $20 a ticket to have to think at a movie theater necessarily. At least not enough people to justify a $10 million budget. I almost wish this was an indie film so we could have had something a bit more deeper and emotionally satisfying in a way, but you know, that's absolutely okay. Sometimes it's just nice to sit in front of a screen and watch a movie with your friends, and that's exactly what this kind of movie is. Though if anyone knows any sort of good, deep, emotionally philosophical movies that talk about sort of robots and AI, I'm more than happy to watch them, which reminds me I need to watch Blade Runner, both of them. Honestly, if I had to recommend this film to anybody, I think it would be sort of anybody who wants just a chill film to watch. You know, people who want to get into sci-fi movies, who's, I don't know, somehow never seen any, but just want something like chill to sort of like wet their taste buds a little bit. I think this is a fine film for that. Sort of like, ooh, like robots, you know what I mean? Because not everyone wants to sort of jump into the deep end of the pool when it comes to a genre. I think this is a solid date night film because it's vague enough and has enough plot points that you can have a conversation about it after and really dig deep into deeper and bigger philosophical questions and stuff like that. But for the most part, I think their target audience was just kind of like as many people as possible who enjoy the thriller genre with a sci-fi twist. They did an alright job. Again, I rated it like a 3 out of 5. You know, it's an okay film. Solid film. Would I watch it again? No. You know, if I'm having a conversation and wanting to seem smart in front of like someone more knowledgeable about film than me, would I bring it up? Absolutely not. But if I was just hanging out with a bunch of chill folks who wanted me to put on a movie that I recommend in a specific genre, absolutely. Sure, why not? It's a fun movie, I think, is essentially what I'm trying to get across. Back on the like characters, I'm trying to think whether or not like my views on Josh and Iris kind of changed as the movie went on. And I don't think they did. I think like they portrayed Josh as too, and I know I use this a lot and I'm sorry, but too cookie cutter. He was too much like a golden retriever boyfriend stereotype to truly be compelling. So I immediately read through it. Like he seemed too nice and too perfect of a boyfriend. And the way Iris played him up seemed too robotic and too sort of like obsessive. Like at one point at the beginning of the movie, I thought like, does she have some sort of mental illness? Why is she so sort of like obsessed with her boyfriend kind of thing? And by the time like near the end of the movie came around and like she's like reading him for filth or whatever, well, she's like, you have a below average penis and blah blah blah. I don't remember what else the fuck she said. It didn't hit as hard for me as I think it would probably hit for other people personally, but the scene after that where he sort of goes and makes her hold her hand over the flame to show like just how sadistic and uncaring he truly is, especially that scene being prior to him fighting, like her and him fighting on the ground rolling, and he's like, tell me I mean the world to you even if you are lying kind of thing. I think if better developed could have been a very interesting overall subplot of the actual movie. Like I think I'm almost disappointed, not to say this was a terrible movie, but I wish it got deeper. Like I wish it talked more about like how this nice guy was ultimately just this sort of violent, misogynistic, sexist piece of shit. Like he was just like this gross dingleberry of a person that portrayed himself as this nice guy when ultimately he was just a piece of shit. But we got what we got kind of thing. Again, in final notes, I think it's a fun, fine movie. You know what I mean? I wish it was more, but we got a bit less, and that's okay. And none of this, as far as like critique or review, is to shit on the movie at all. Like I'm not not shitting on the movie. I think it's a fun and fine movie. I think like very often, because of like my own neurodivergence, I am always looking when it comes to like thrillers to like be like shocked or like, you know, be thrown for a loop in some way, shape, or form. And I didn't necessarily get that. So like I kind of predicted a lot of the movie. So by the end of it, I wasn't shocked. So it left me a bit disappointed. But I think overall, the average person who isn't analyzing every single scene of a movie and going through it with a fine-tooth comb will enjoy the movie. I think it's a fine movie. And I think, yeah, I'm pretty confident and comfortable with my 3 out of 5. So if you're looking for a 3 out of 5 movie, go check it out. With that being said, I hope my commentary or my review it did something for you, whether it entertained you or made you think of me fondly, I guess. Who knows. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video. I don't know how to end these, so peace.